Hi, everybody. We have a,
The sound's not on.
oh, where is it?
Oh yeah, it is.
Okay. We're checking the sound. I hope everybody is doing okay and continues to do okay. Just be safe. It's weird times, so we just have to go with the punches. I have a question here from Ian Rimmer in England. I'm not sure whether I've tackled this one before, but we'll give it another try and see if this might be helpful. He asks, how do we know when we're in connection with a higher plane vibration and it's not just our personality getting in the way? I'd like to answer the last part first because it makes sense to do so. And I've written a little bit here in case I forget something, but hopefully I can add to what I've said. The dilemma is that the personality is constructed for a purpose, and it's constructed for a purpose that relates basically directly to trying to understand the world, and literally is a mimicker of patterns. We don't see that very well in our lives, but if we take a look all around us and try to understand how we live over time and how we function over time, is that what we do is we basically are entrenched with many ideas from the time that we're very young, and we are entrenched with patterns. We watch patterns. Our whole system is a vibratory investigator, physically, emotionally, and mentally. We're a huge sensory system. And what we do is we, strangely enough, this is going to sound a little weird, but we perceive energy coming at us without our knowledge. We perceive energy coming at us, and it touches us, the energy form that we have. We call it personality, and it's made up of physical, emotional, mental stuff, constructed in a manner that relates to an evaluation of a kind of form, and using form in a sense of a construct, like a table, like a chair, like this, but personality that is named Ron, Jack, George, Mary, Jean. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But it does matter to the form because it constantly reflects inwardly, outwardly, brings in information up to the brain. The brain makes some sense of it. And then we have words that we use to express the sense that we've made of something, or thoughts, or reactions. And those constructed systems are really based on perceiving our parental background. And literally, anyone who's been involved with trying to help us build a construct that enables us to deal with life, a personality. There's really basically no negation in that. And sometimes it's a luck of the draw, and sometimes it's, I hate to say that luck of the draw thing, sometimes basically it's genetics in terms of how we see things. And sometimes it's very important that the construction that we set up in our personality is noticed by us. However, we're not trained in that. No one comes in when you're to you and starts explaining that you are going to copy your parental background. You're going to look at what love means, for example, to them. Every Thursday night, they fight like crazy. Friday night, they sulk. Saturday night, they're coming closer together. And by Sunday, everybody's sitting around a table thinking, life is good. Oh, it's a makeup. None of them know what they're doing consciously. They're reacting, engaging, reading information, bringing out expression based on information in a way that they have seen others do in their lifetime. And if it worked well for those people, then it must work well for you. Basically, this is how it works. It's kind of a short paragraph of how one might begin to look at things. But at the same time, looking at them and saying, let's add this other feature. You eventually get to be pretty happy with what you've constructed based on how it makes you feel to be valued or be important or less important or kind of awkward or however it works out for you. And you get used to that sensation. Therefore, you start protecting how you've constructed you unknowingly. There's no negation in any of this. But there is a kind of possible capacity that the personality can have. It's the capacity to begin to be able to perceive these things, not with a consideration that it must be judged and eradicated, because that doesn't work. Eradication can't happen. But fusion with a new idea, and suddenly the new idea plays once or twice, is protected against, plays consistently over a period of time, protected against, plays, and suddenly it's accepted to some degree in the mix of what a personality is. And that mix and the acceptance of it is very valuable. And people live their lives and they never shift or change. And they don't shift or change, not because they're bad people. It's because, or they don't think they need to change, because it gets them what they want. And what they want is what they believe they must get to comfort themselves in relationship to feeling valued or being valued in relationship to others. Somehow that vital or aspect of vitality is painted with a certain number of features that, if not resorted to, they are somehow going to be not valuable in the view of the personality itself. So that you're hearing that it's biased. Okay, so what if it's biased? All of our personalities are biased to some degree. Many people who even consider themselves spiritual, they are biased in how they are spiritually engaged. That's personality. It is not negative, but the connection with higher state is slightly different than that. A connection with higher state, and by the way, we must go through those engagements. The connection with higher state is complex. If you consider this to be of value, what I'm about to say, every time you engage with life age 3, age 2, age 1, age 5, age 10, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 60, 70, 80, 90, 105. You are using a rendering of love to construct a way of being in this world. It is what you are given freely. So one could say you are filled with a higher state, unperceived by us. We would call that our personalized intention to be the way we are. Therefore, we are valued because we are the way we are. You could say that. However, I'm trying to put forward this idea. You are using a relationship with love given freely at a universal level. Every individual who exists, no matter what misery they're involved with, how miserable or vile they may be, has been constructed relative to a rendering of love. Then you have to ask the question, why would all love be given to those who would abuse it? Now, hang on there. There's different levels of abuse here. There's coarser levels of loving, and the coarsest would be self-interested, focus only on themselves, all others are unimportant. It's just a view, a bias. Well, yeah, sure, you could say. And then as you become more and more able to understand there are others on the planet living here of all mixed of race and color and verbal interaction, type of belief, all kinds of beliefs. They use the love that is given them freely in the commencement of an engagement with life on these planes, constructed even in the belly to some degree, a love that will be used for the purpose of constructing a form, perceiving how others would have us be, meaning a parental background would mean that everything you copy, if anything looks like that, they would think that you were quite something because you were similar to them and they might not even know it. Or they might look at you and say to themselves, what is that person trying to be? But they're like that and they would not know that. All you're doing is copying. The dilemma is our personality is not set up to notice this. It's not a given. It's not an automatic. And when you do notice, it doesn't go away right away. You constructed it with love for the purpose of survival in a manner that relates directly to the need you believe you must have. Otherwise, if you don't have it, you can't function. It's just not real. You can function without it. You will have something else because that love is there for you to continue to engage. By the way, if a shift occurs, you use that same love in the shifting to do something slightly different. Your system can only handle slightly different. It is biased against too much of an extreme response. Although you could engage with an extreme response opposite to what you did before, idealize that response, and act that way under some circumstances and other ways under other circumstances, and never know you were just turning the coin from one side to another. And you're using the same internal facility intensity to protect, in a kind of a way, both sides of that coin, but in all honesty, thinking that you're only being another way. This is a slow fusion, as opposed to bad there, now good there. We are a mix of engagement with life. A method of beginning to try to understand this is trying to just take a look and watch you in action. Start to become tone sensitive a bit. Let your eyes not miss anything. Watch what you say and the tones which you use to say it. You'll hear the intensity that drifts into the biases you've had before. It will help you to see the biases you had before, and it will be okay if you don't start judging what you've done and what you're doing. We're set up to judge what we do, especially others. And in fact, learning how to be more helpful to you and less judgment involved with you, using less judgment involved with you, you begin to be okay with looking and wondering why others act the way they do. You do not have to do this to get along in this world. But the question is, how do I know and notice the difference about when a higher state starts entering in? It's not only about you doing things according to what you believe things should be done if you were in a higher state, so-called, defined by us. But if you begin to notice slowly how you're functioning, and you're also noticing that you're asking some questions. Why am I doing this? Am I too nervous? Am I too afraid? Am I too unwilling to do anything else? Because if I do, something bad will happen? It could be. Your answers are as good as mine with that question. You'll be looking at you and wondering. It's a quest in that place. You're looking at your biases and you're trying to soften them down and be kinder to you in your judgments, your assessments, because you're not only judging others or assessing others, you're judging yourself. The intensity in you gets stronger and stronger. You invalidate, in a kind of a way, others who have no way of knowing what else to do other than what they're doing. And that means you're invalidating the love that they've constructed. And it's your right to do that. Life with. And in fact, it's not that you're doing. You're looking at their actions and saying, I wish they didn't act like that because that's not helpful to them when they're actually acting out like that. You don't know you're doing that, but you can know that slowly by watching you and being respectful to you and trying to understand you. And look, this is not a 24/7 thing. Initially, when you start off, you go slowly. Ultimately, when you're engaged somewhere in the middle someplace, you don't have to be attending really hard. What's happening is you're seeing better than you could. Your awareness antenna, should you have any, under those circumstances, will begin to get stronger, and you'll notice you doing something you kind of wish you didn't do. So you'll kind of pause a bit, and it will soften, and you can talk to yourself. You can use energy or engage with energy. Those of you who understand what I'm talking about there, you're able to have energy move through you for the purpose of helping you in increments that can be helpful to you, and you can begin to maintain over time. Time is relative, of course. It will be in relationship to how much you can allow yourself to do that. Then you can learn how to be honest with yourself about what you're seeing and what you're doing. Be constructive, but be honest. And honesty is not called harsh. That is not honesty. Honesty is not fantasizing about how great you are or how whatever you are. It's more like, good. I noticed that. Wow. I kind of think that's going to happen again. Check it out. It may happen again. Slowly, you can learn not to have it happen quite as quickly. Over a period of time, can't tell you what that period is, different for all of us. You slowly say, wow, now it's happening. I'm watching it, and I would prefer it not to happen. So I'll talk to it. Easy, easy, easy. And the emotion will slow down. If you're trained, like all of us are, often, if something hurts you rather badly, you will react rather harshly because it's hurting. Not because it's right to react, because it's hurting you. Your perception around pain is strong, as all of us have experienced in our life. Slowing down that hurting and softening it a bit the best you can, gentling you down, softens down the hurting a little bit. It will come back. It's trained to come back. There's no expectation of being ideally able to be soft all the time. That's nonsense in the world of normal on these planes. But if you soften to some degree, then you will bring normal up. You will shift normal on these planes, or be a part of shifting normal on these planes. This is really eventful. It's a cosmic response. My God, how could that possibly happen? It can. Under those conditions, and I'm talking about the conditions of perception slowly easing off. You don't have to give yourself a pat in the back every time you're able to do that. You can. Careful, you'll build a pattern of patting you on the back and not seeing. It will kind of indenture you to the need of patting you on the back. If others don't do that, then they're not good for you. It's not real. But it is something that some of us do because we need it. We're vulnerable, and we've not been reassured very often in an honest way. And so we can connect the dots. I'm being reassured because, oh my God, I am doing well, and that's pretty darn good. So then it's real. That's different, and that's really helpful. You then begin to notice, through a little practice, energy in you and around you that you use, you could say intensity, it's true, around you that you use for the purpose of engaging with life. That's a level of loving. And it goes from the coarsest loving on these planes to the most subtle and elegance of loving on planes we have no idea about, that we can only theorize about. If we run into a plane of loving that is beyond our normal capacity, but only moving towards the middle of tremendous love, then we will think we're in the highest form of engagement possible in existence. Because we're not used to being loved without any declaration of what love needs to be. Not used to this. On our planes, you're loved because. There's a because. There's an engagement with activity or function somehow that makes you a loving being. You have to act in a certain way to be a loving being. Picture this. A person walks down the street, relaxed, perhaps smiling, perhaps not smiling, perhaps showing no emotion, perhaps showing just being in a comfort zone, comforted within themselves, with an act of flow or love, movement within them that they can perceive. Someone comes out of a building, walks down the street, passes them, they perceive that flow that that person has, and they move on with their business, and the other person goes by, meets that person down the street, and says, I just met the strangest person. I smiled at them. They never even noticed. The focus of that loving being was not on the smile of the individual. It was on the engagement with how they functioned inside. They perceived that and was non-judgmental, didn't even notice, didn't need to, but engaged with that in the most loving way. The interpretation of that other individual was based on the biases that that individual had with respect to how a person must respond to what they do. And this is the nature of how we live life. It's not uncommon. It's very common and very natural, because this is the nature of how we have learned how to engage with others and how we have learned to present to others. Another way, then, let's call another person comes out of that street and has an awareness of a higher state to some degree, not huge, idealistically great, they could do this and that or that, but they can perceive that that individual walking down the street is glowing inside. Why? Because in a kind of a way, this person is interpreting that glowing, loving person walking down the street, even though she or he did not even have any visuals that said that, but they are perceiving energy coming into them, and it's gentle, it's soft, even though that person may not even characteristically look whatever which way. That glow would be in them, and they would say, that person knows. His knowing is related to his being internally. this person coming out of the doorway of another house is connecting with that individual internally, not on the surface. Now, that person walking down the street, we didn't describe what they were wearing, did we? We didn't say that she had a hat on crooked. We didn't say that he had slacks on that were dirty. We didn't say that she had a great, wondrous way of wearing her coat. But why was it all rough? And it didn't look very good, and her shoes weren't clean, and his were this way or that way. None of that was even considered. But in our world, remember, we consider these things to be a factor in how we engage and read energetically an individual based on how they are surrounded by either their expressions, their clothing, their facial features, how their ears are, how their hair is, how they walk, how they're able in some way to be functional. I'll give you a silly, one could say, example of this. I had the good fortune back in about 1970, maybe one or 70, to go to a lecture given by a person who was an interesting person, interesting lecture. And it was on an esoteric, some spiritual topic. I can't remember the topic right now. But what I do remember is when I walked into this place, it was down near Richmond. I walked into this hall, and Richmond, Ontario, just in case you're going to look it up on a map, if you're interested. And I walked into the hallway up this little stairway, and there's this, I would say, woman in a wheelchair, quite frozen, you might say, unable to do very much of anything, but she could speak, and she couldn't really move around too much. She was pretty well locked in. I'm sorry to say, I do not really know what her dilemma was, but she was definitely paralyzed from the waist down, and part of her body on the upper body was paralyzed as well. And she looked up and she said, "Oh my goodness, isn't that wonderful?" And she looked me in the eye and she said, "When did it all begin for you?" And I said to myself, uh-oh, what the hey? What is this all about? And then I realized when I looked into her eyes, her throat center and her chest was vibrating, and her brow center was vibrating. And I thought, oh my goodness, here's a giant of a person locked into a wheelchair. And I said, I don't know exactly when it started to happen, but I'm glad it did because I can see you. And she said, and I can see you. It is so good to meet you. And we introduced each other. We touched each other's hand because we couldn't shake each other's hand. And I said, I'm glad to have come to this meeting. From there on in, the meeting wasn't that terrific. Not as much, no offense to the speaker, it wasn't about that. The speaker did really well. But the engagement in that particular place was a wondrous engagement that allowed me to know, along with some beginning pieces like we all begin to know, a little bit about a perception that relates to a higher state. She was not talking about my wondrous salt and pepper hair at the time. And she wasn't talking about my my physical form, but she was talking about a little bit of something that had started in me. And I was very grateful that it had started. And it was different. So, still learning. I was learning then. I learned for the next umpteen years, and I'm still learning now, as you are, as we are, as you are, Ian. And when that higher state is there, you're not looking for anything other than you learning how to perceive differently that which is being emanated in your direction, different than analyzing the personality. The personality is not there engaging with the higher state. You're not analyzing what they can do, what they can't do, how they are able, how they're able to do this or that or the other thing. You're looking at the energy coming in your direction for a purpose that relates to something related to the higher state. Higher state has a view of love. How much love can this person handle? And of what frequency can that love be to enable them to go beyond where they are currently? Our hope is, everyone's hope is what I mean, that each and every one of us can move broader internally, externally perhaps, but internally in a manner that can allow more to come in for a purpose slightly different than what the normal personality dictates should happen if you are equipped to engage with a higher state. Our definitions are constructed close to these planes, and they have to be because that's where we are. Eventually, they will become broader, and a deeper level of understanding will begin to occur. And the question will still be there. It might be altered. It might say something like, how much of this higher state level energy can I handle in its flow through me for the purpose of being helpful to others? And as it is doing that, it is helping me to grow beyond what I am right now, one could say. That becomes a request as well as the wish for help in handling more in relative purposes, because each and every person is slightly different than the other. And that is also valuable. That means all aspects of humanity can be affected if one could take that into a view from another level beyond where we are now, from the coarser to the, at least hopefully, in towards the middle of an engagement with a higher state. I hope that that helps, Ian. I thought I had talked about this before, but you may be right. Maybe I talked about it in conjunction with another question, because sometimes I'll bring two questions together because they're very, very similar to each other. And that might then be a little bit helpful. Great. Some of these are from Marie-Josée Perrier, and I won't, she has about 4 or 5 questions here, but they are interlinked, but they're quite, let's say, I'll give you one. How can we live our life from a place of unfoldment rather than a planned life? When you look at things from a question point of view, they're very specific, all questions. And that's how we do things. But when we're looking at these terms, unfoldment, these terms, rather than a planned life. There is an interaction and integration, Jungian folks would say. What that really means is up for grabs based on the biases of whatever background you have, right? And with no disrespect to any backgrounds, absolutely none. An idea can formulate within your mind about what is valuable and what is not valuable in terms of spiritual growth. And 10 chances to 1, that idea is going to be important and it will affect your life. And you will plan around it. Even if you don't know you're planning around it, you are planning around it. You are engaging with a kind of focal point that will lead you towards that focal point. You have a focal point, which is leading you towards another focal point. It's like coming up with a sentence. You begin it. And you try to make sense of something. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, like a paragraph does, like a story does. And if you come up with a question like this, you have already constructed an unfoldment story, what it looks like, because you have the terminology. You've already done this. And in doing that, you act in life relative to that particular version of what you believe that unfoldment should look like, without even knowing what it looks like. You've already charted something. Everything seems like a plan when you're trying to do something different than what you naturally normally do reflexively. Everything looks like a plan. When you do something reflexively, you're not planning, but you're acting on a measured way of engaging with life. During that act, you're using intensity, a level of loving, to assert that way of engaging. And you're giving it value. But it's virtual. It's not as real. The ancients used to talk about that. Oh, it's just unreal. No, it's real under these terms, so therefore it has a reality. But in the old ancient terms, it is not you doing the higher state work. Some said, some believe that's what was said. I don't think that's what it meant. Every plan you come up with, every virtual reality that you create, you are in a movement with it towards another virtual reality, which is just beyond the one you created. Now that sounds weird. I agree. But let's look at that for a second, just for a second. You see you as you are. You know, when I'm talking to Maria, I'm also talking to everybody. I'm talking to myself as well. You see you as you are. If you do not allow yourself to be okay with growing beyond that, you will protect that image of you, or that is filled with images that you constructed, that image of you, and you will be that until you're no longer here on these planes this time around. And you will do that because you will believe that you are comforted by what you do and it gives you value. Therefore, you are virtually valuable. You do not know you were valuable before you ever did that, but you were. This depth of understanding that you have about you, or that you would want about you, is already there in a kind of a way. the questioning that you come up with if it's not someone else's questions? Are the questions that you would ask yourself so you can begin to allow yourself to come up with an answer, no matter how silly it sounds to you. You will add to that answer. If you allow yourself to notice that that answer is not really exactly what you believe an answer might be, then you have an opportunity to move beyond that bias into a willingness that allows you another answer. This is not so simple because within a second, people can be upset about hearing an answer that they believe they understand, but they jump to conclusions about what the answer means that comes back in their direction. This is a natural place because you are defending the threat against an answer you already have. This is probably the most normal thing in all human beings that anyone could ever come up with. Some hide their responses to that, but you still have them. Some don't hide it. They just immediately, that's wrong. And that is a way of doing things. Somewhere in the middle, one could become curious about what the other person means by what they said. Ask them. You might begin to notice that as they're speaking about it, they're changing their meaning. Then you change, if you can, your listening. Because you're going to jump to a conclusion too. This will occur. This is the nature of us. Because we're one step forward, two steps back. I got to protect that thing. And 2 steps forward, I got to protect that thing. This is normal and it's not negative. But we act as if it's negative, especially verbally, because the emotion comes out of our throat center, related to our will center, the gonad center, root center. It's a survival response, energetically talking, of course. And we express that because we are trained in that for, if you're 30, you're trained for 30 years. If you're 20, it's 20. If you're 90, it's 90. You're trained to do that, to validate a whole series of images that relates to one image that you're engaging with as what you call personality. So much confusion, so many biases, so much unwillingness to reconsider, to try and understand broader when you already have the perfect answer. This is very difficult. But it's in the relationship. It's within the relationship that you have with a higher state. That higher states know that you must grow through you. If you have no one to try and help you to understand that you're overreacting, then you have to be the person to understand that. You're not in a state. You're in a relative state to understand that. Because you would believe that someone will want you to say something or do something that you don't want to do. This is natural. So in the moments that you have reflecting you, if you could be curious about an understanding that sounds one way but may be a different way, it may help you to listen through, because the other person may not know exactly what they mean by what they're saying. Once again, the question, the questing, the questioning. hardly anybody questions themselves. It's okay. It's the nature of what we learned. You're sitting at an early rendering of a kitchen table, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and you know that you have a voice, but the voice is not going to be heard very well because the voice is not matured enough. Even when it is more mature, it may not be heard. But you take that with you from 5 years old or 7 years old up to 25, 26, 50, 40, whatever it may be. And you have a connection with that response that is more matured. But what's matured is not the structure of it, the bias of it. It's how you must respond that's matured. You're faster, you're quicker, you're more validating of yourself. You're still 5 years old in a 45-year-old body or whatever it may be. That's not uncommon. That's how we live our world. To see into it, to understand it, to not be disrespectful to it, to not be willing to think that anyone that doesn't comply with it is not worth anything, is another way of seeing things, different than the way that we have learned through our experience. And it's powerful. Learning through experience is very powerful. Often forgotten, but more often never forgotten through the reflexes, but our memory doesn't support it. Our reflexes support it. That's an active remembering in a physical, emotional, mental plane that we call personality. So when all of that is being cultivated by a higher state, by love. But what's also cultivated, if activated, is a willingness to see, to recognize, to attempt to understand what is going on in that moment and in moments that relate to others at the same time. There's no negation to it either way. It's just place of reference. It can occur in any human being's moment or moments of living life, as well as other things can occur. Feeling love for other people, feeling not so much love for other people. We are capable of so many responses. A little wondering about the responses you have, why they seem to be that way, instead of only validating and defending those responses. There is no law that says you must agree with every response you have. There's no rule in our human expression that says that is a must. It's definitely a habit. We have an appetite for it. We chew on those things a lot. We think they either validate or invalidate us, and therefore others are invalidating us. That's not real. If you ever ask for an opinion, you may get one. It may not agree with yours. But if it doesn't, it may not be what you think it is. It has have to ask deeper. You have to ask yourself questions deeper too. It's part of learning and being okay with you. Uh, and that second step, learning, is not considered valuable by many. It Once you hit a certain age, you should have learned it all by now, and everything you say is right. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. It never has. It just appears to work that way. Hopefully, beyond the understanding that all of us have at this moment, there is more. And I'm not talking about our understanding versus another's understanding. That's not interesting. What is interesting is knowing beyond what we know that flow that is real and profound and existent can be perceived by anyone, including perceiving what you think is true and then seeing that it's only part of the picture. It's not, it's just a piece. And so many pieces come together. And even then, when they all come together in a relationship with universality or higher states, God, whatever you might call it, you are just at the point where more can be perceived. I suspect that many of us would like that to happen, probably sooner than we can handle it. Higher states are in us now. Love is in us now. And we use it to be angry, frustrated, happy, joyful, spiritual. Not so much. And much, the best we can. I hope everyone has a really good evening. We're about to meditate for about 45 to 50 minutes, something like that. And we'll be meditating, I think, to Daniel Bay's meditation, which, by the way, we have a CD of it, including a meditative state that relates to turning on the brow and the heart center and the throat center. And it's still available. Anyone wants it, you're very welcome. Just let us know and we'll ship it off to you. Take care, everybody. Wish you well. And now we'll just begin to do a form of balancing and grounding. You do what you do, and please take care, and we'll talk to you soon.